Dubai is serving up some real delicacies in this year's tournament. After that thrilling super over between Mumbai and Bangalore, we're now ready ourselves for Kolkata Knight Riders against Rahul Tewatia's team as they take center stage in Dubai. And Rajasthan Royals enter this game as the only team unbeaten so far in this year's IPL. It's match number 12. It's in Dubai. Kolkata on a high after beating Sunrisers Hyderabad in spite of going down to the Mumbai Indians. The Rajasthan Royals have to get used to a slightly longer boundary that Steve Smith's already pointed out after 2 games that their batters were spoilt at in Sharjah. The news is that Smith has done exactly what he did in Sharjah and decided to have a bowl first. But as all the action is focused in Dubai, it's my pleasure to welcome from the very fancy Fairmont Hotel in Abu Dhabi both Deep Das Gupta and Ajit Agarkar, who makes his first appearance on our live shows. I've missed you, Ajit. Not to say that I've not been happy with you, Deep, or with Sanjay Manjrekar day in, day out, but it's good to have you, Ajit.
Thanks, Ronak. It took you about, 12 days? You say you missed me. So nice to be here. Looking forward to another good game.
Yeah, what to do now? Sanjay Manjrekar wanted all the days of the first 10, 11. And I thought, you know it is. You must give him first preference. Senior statesman that he is, your captain. Deep Das Gupta, you're here in good spirits as well. And we're looking ahead to a game that should be good fun. Rajasthan Royals seem to have got everyone's attention in this year's tournament, but they moved from Sharjah to Dubai. This should be interesting.
It should be. And first game outside Sharjah, obviously, they've got 216, 226 in the first 2 games. This would be a little different, the surface. So it'll be interesting how they manage it.
And we are looking at 2 teams, both unchanged. So this is the pre-match show on Whirlpool Presents ESPN Cricket for T20 Time Out, powered by Dell. No surprises there, Ajit. KKR looked much better in that second game against Sunrisers than when they went down to Mumbai Indians in their opener. They've gone unchanged. So 7 bowling options for Dinesh Karthik, like he did use in the last game. And Rajasthan are unchanged as well. Thoughts on KKR? No reason to change things after winning?
Yeah, I suppose the win would have made that decision easier for them. I'd still look at another batsman for them, because watching that game, they were 3 down at one point, and Owen Morgan played a risky shot at the start of his inning. That wicket goes, suddenly looking at Russell and then the bowlers. So it's still a formidable team, KKR, and so many bowling options that they can then, once they set a total, can restrict Rajasthan Royals. So not surprised. I think both teams, once you have wins, you don't really want to mess around. We've seen Pat Cummins bat well at that number 7, so they've trusted that 11.
Yeah, they're batting first for the first time in this tournament, which will also be interesting. They conceded too many, as it turns out, against Mumbai, and they did a good job against Sunrisers Hyderabad. You look at that team, and we brought this point up with Ian Bishop on the previews as well. He wants to see Andre Russell bat higher, Deep, but this is the only team that actually has 2 genuine bowlers in their top 6, so they can afford to play extra bowlers. But do you share Ajit's concern of perhaps one more batter? They did start with Nikhil Nayak and then replaced him for Varun Chakravarti.
So if you look at that squad, there's only Nikhil Nayak who actually bats in the middle order, right? You have other options like Siddesh Lad, who bats top of the order in T20 cricket. You have Rahul Tripathi, who also bats top of the order in T20 cricket. So apart from Nikhil Nayak, they don't really have a somebody who knows how to bat at number 5, 6. And going by that team, I know, and that's a genuine, when you look at that 11, there's a genuine concern. What happens if there are 2-3 quick wickets? Then you're into Andre Russell and the bowlers. But all those bowlers, they are fairly decent bat as well. For example, Mark is a decent bat, Nagarkoti is a decent bat. But yes, if you have an extra batsman there, that's kind of an assurance that you have when you look at that playing 11 every time you do that.
Yeah, Pat Cummins is there. So let's remember that very few guys can say that they've got as good a batsman as Pat Cummins at 8. But this is a thing that KKR can afford to do more than other teams. We discussed yesterday, Ajit, with the Sunrisers, that Priyam Garg position is not being utilized. Can they play another bowler to give them better balance? For KKR, they've taken this call that we'd rather have 7 bowling options. Is that just something you can afford because you have Narayan and Russell, or is this still a risk for you?
No, absolutely. I don't think it's a risk. As the tournament progresses, they'll probably find out whether they need that extra bowler. At this point, I looked at top 6 is very formidable. Lots of experience and lots of explosive power at that. And we saw what a special player Shubman Gill is in that last game. So they've got a formidable six. I always feel that those six should be able to do the job for you, whether you're batting first or chasing a score. That that kind of affords them. And like you said, Sunil Narayan and Andre Russell both bat and bowl, so that makes life a lot easier. And Pat Cummins actually he smashed four sixes of Bumrah, and that can't be easy for a normal player. So he's got some batting ability at number seven, and is the top six which makes it so much easier for him to take that option of having that extra bowler, and might be handy on some good wickets. And we've seen at least in Dubai somehow, because the pitch is on one side, one of the boundaries seems short, so that can always come in handy, because one or two of the bowlers can always suffer on those grounds.
All right, brilliant. Now, Rajasthan are also unchanged. We didn't expect changes after that thrilling game that they managed to, that heist that they pulled off against Kings 11 Punjab. So no changes for Steve Smith's side. So no room for Yashasvi Jaiswal, who started in Joss Butler's absence. But then, since Butler's available, you've got him and Smith at the top. Samson can't put a foot wrong. It'll be interesting to see how he goes in Dubai after 2 games in Sharjah. Then Uttapa, Tewatia, Riyan Parag, and the bowlers, of which many can also bat. Shreyas Gopal can bat, Jofra Archer can bat, Tom Curran can bat. You look at that team, Deep, and do you still feel somewhere there is a question mark on the middle order? Uttapa, Tewatia, Riyan Parag, and the bowlers?
Well, you know what, the way Rahul Tewatia batted in the last game, I mean, yeah. But having said that, Robin Uthappa, I think at start of his career, he was batting at 4, 5, 6, so he knows how to bat there. So it's all right. It's all right. They haven't been tested as yet, to be very, very honest. I mean, it's been Steve Smith, Sanju Samson, and Tewatia in the last game. But it looks all right. I think that's the best they've got, to be very, very honest. I mean, unless you get in someone like a David Miller and all, it'll be very difficult to kind of find a better middle order than that.
Yeah, fair enough. We did ask this question to Bish when we previewed this game. Ajit, can you play a Varun Aaron, a little more pace at a ground like Dubai? And he says, after what those guys have been through at Sharjah, finally you come to a big ground and you want to change the bowlers. That would just be cruel on whoever bowled. So Ankit Rajput keeps his place. Happy with the shape of and the look of the Rajasthan bowling?
Yeah, I think so. I think, again, when you've won 2 games, and it's been hard. We've seen high scoring games. It's been hard on them as bowlers. So yeah, I think it's only fair that if they've had the worst of the conditions as bowlers, they should get a ground that that affords them a little bit more of a chance. Even though we've seen some big scores in Dubai, little bit disappointed, to be honest, that Yashasvi Jaiswal missed out after that first game. Kind of understand that once Steve Smith decided to open and Butler coming back, he's got to open. It was a little bit unfortunate, but would have loved to see him play a little bit more, because he's got a lot of promise.
Yeah, Andrew McDonald made a point that don't rule out Yashasvi Jaiswal in the middle order as they look to get left-hand options in the absence of being able to play David Miller or Ben Stokes. So keep an eye out if things do change. That position for Riyan Parag, Robin Uthappa could come under the scanner, but that's the team they've gone with for now. Now on the pre-show, we love to discuss certain matchups and tactics in particular, and I finally waited for a day where Kolkata can bat first to have this conversation. Sunil Narayan, the opener. Now, it's been a revelation for the Knight Riders when the decision was taken. But as we look at the numbers over time, Ajit, and we look at Narayan's season last year too, it seems like the IPL at least is a place where teams have gotten smart of how to keep Narayan the opener quiet. He's not at a significant score this tournament, although early days, but he also went a lot of last season without having the same impact as a batsman that he has had before. Is it time to perhaps reconsider or shelf that experiment?
Not yet, in my opinion. Although he's not going to have a fun time against Jofra Archer tonight, which is not going to help. But look, he's had an impact at that position, and the way that team is built, I think that's probably the best position for him. If they go in with an extra batsman who opens, then you can probably understand they drop him down the order. They don't mind losing Sunil Narayan if it's early, even if it's not for too many, because their whole batting is the next 5 that follow. So it's a real bonus if he comes off, and even if he comes off for 3 or 4 overs, which we haven't seen, unfortunately, for KKR this year, that's good enough for them. I don't think they're looking for him to get 100 at the top of the order. It's more the impact that they can create and put a lot of pressure in that power play. So too early to go away from that, but you'll have to keep a close watch. If he does continue the form or lack of form that he's in, they'll have to look at other options.
Yeah, I mean, you thought with Narayan what you got, Deep, was either he will get you off to a fly or he'll get out quickly. He got 9 of 10 in the first game against Mumbai in a chase, and he got a duck and 2 balls in the next. There are a lot of these innings last year where he was around for about 15, 20 balls and went at that 100 sort of strike rate. There was a time when you thought it's okay. Narayan, if Narayan gets out early, it doesn't make a difference. Is that still true of this current Kolkata side where Shubman Gill opens at the top and you're not sure whether Karthik comes 3, Rana comes 3? So do you still think that decision still holds true, that Narayan at the top is nothing to lose?
Right. Okay, I completely agree with that. And a couple of points why I say that. One is it's about expectation, right? If you're expecting Sunil Narayan as a all-rounder, I think you need to reassess your expectations, because he's a bowler. His job is to bowl 4 overs, and if he gets those runs top of the order, that's a bonus, as Ajit mentioned. So this is how I look at it. I don't look at him as a batsman at all. I look at him as a bowler who has this ability to get you a great start, right? That is one. Secondly, if he does not bat, where does he bat? He bats at number 8. It's not that you're wasting a wicket. Chances are, if he bats at number 8, he might not even get to bat in in the most matches or not. So you're not really wasting a wicket. It's my second point. And now my third point is this: because he's opening, it's not that you are pushing the batting order further back. Nitish Rana does not open, generally speaking. DK does not open. I mean, obviously he's batted from 1 to 6 everywhere, but he generally does not open. So it's not that you are sacrificing an opener for him, right? You're sending somebody in the middle order, pushing him somebody in the middle order, number 3, just to accommodate him. You're not doing that. Everyone else is kind of playing in their own places. So I don't see why he shouldn't be opening it. And like I said, if you think he's a batsman or an all-rounder, then I think it's about managing expectations, to be fair.
The luxury that KKR have, and that's what we kept talking about, these 7 bowlers, and Nitish Rana probably 8 if you need him to bowl, that if it doesn't work with Narayan, he can always drop down the order and they play their extra batsman and they still don't lose anything in their bowling. So the resources that they have in their bowling will eventually look after that if they do decide to go away from it. But at this point, seems too premature.
Yeah, right. He had a good CPL as a batsman. Let's put that in perspective. Wherever you want to keep the CPL in comparison to the IPL, that's another conversation. But the other thing we have seen, Ajit, is teams have gotten smarter how to bowl to Narayan. Now, Sanjay Manjrekar said they should use Narayan tactfully, maybe against the Sunrisers who don't have express pace at the top. But against, like you said, Jofra Archer coming on, Mumbai have always thrown a lot of pace when Narayan's come in, try and cramp him and whatnot. So teams have gotten smarter. There was a time where we used to say, we had this conversation that bowlers are under pressure against Narayan because he has nothing to lose, and he ends up actually putting them under a lot more pressure than the other way around. But teams have gotten smarter in the IPL at least.
I think so. And look at the grounds that they've played on as well. They played at Abu Dhabi. They still haven't played in Sharjah, where the case might be different. But I don't think you can use him against certain teams and not otherwise. I think that's the 11 or that's the composition that KKR are quite comfortable with, at least for now. And that's where they want to approach. So that, like Deep said, they're 3, 4, 5, 6 bat in their respective positions and don't really have to mess around with that order. And it's worked for them. So a couple of games into the tournament, it's too early. And when you've already got a win under your belt, give you that affords you that cushion to just persist for it a bit longer.
All right. Now let's discuss the other West Indian in that team, and his batting order becomes a regular point of debate when KKR play. It's like Pollard for Mumbai, it's Russell for KKR. Now you think when they're chasing, that argument is easier, Deep. When you need Andre Russell depending on match situation, etc. Ian Bishop yesterday, or rather day before, when the Mumbai Bangalore game was on, he says, I can't for the life of me get why people expect Pollard and Russell to keep doing these superhuman type jobs when the asking rate goes 15, 16, that sort of thing. When they're batting first, perhaps a different conversation. We were surprised to see Dinesh Karthik come up the order in 2 games. How do you use Andre Russell now to at least counter that argument of why can't you give Pollard and Russell more game time, more balls, they're coming off cricket?
Okay, now that KKR is batting first, let's just talk about batting first, right? So how I see it is, if they have a good start, then Andre Russell goes in, irrespective of what number it is. He just goes in at, let's say, 10 overs. Let's say the score is 10 overs, 90 or something, right? And the first wicket falls then Russell goes in. It's not just about numbers here. It's more about the situation. So you try and send him and make sure that you maximize his abilities as well. So that's how I say it. The other important thing is having someone like Ian Morgan does not help. He's also not someone who bats at 120 strike rate, right? And he plays the spin better, he rotates the strike better. So obviously having someone like Ian Morgan also in the side, will you will tend to push Ian Morgan a further, I mean, higher than Andre Russell, right? And that's where I think they got to be a little careful. For example, if they have a great start, well, why not send Andre Russell in earlier and see where you end up.
Yeah, that's the conversation, Ajit. How much time do you leave for Andre Russell? Forget batting positions. We know those are fluid. But how much time do you want to give on Andre Russell? Look at that Mumbai-Bangalore game, and you felt, even though Virat Kohli struggled, that AB de Villiers came in at just the right time to still have a significant enough impact. If he faces 25, 30 balls, he can impact the game, which is what happened. How many balls do you want to give? How many overs do you want to give Andre Russell to make sure he has an impact in your first innings?
20 perhaps, but but no, it's that's the thing. I 100% agree. You don't expect them to do superhuman things all the time. But the only one thing, I mean, you can look at that strike rate. I mean, numbers tell you the story, and that average, it's ridiculous numbers, and the impact he's had. The one thing I'll say though, his style of batting increasingly has just become going after each ball, which
Yeah.
then do you want to send him in too early and risk of then losing his wicket? I'm not saying, or then does he bat differently? Like with Pollard does bat a little bit differently with the amount, if there's a bit more time. With Andre Russell, increasingly you can see there's just one way to bat, and it's obviously effective. But there's always a risk if you send him in too early. I'd still want KKR to do that, depending on the match situation, because you don't want someone like him with his power to just sit in the shed and bat 2 overs at the end, or 3 overs at the end. So that's why it depends on the starts, but it also will depend on how he approaches his innings. At the moment, from what we've seen, he just wants to hit every ball out of the park, which he has the ability to. But sometimes it's not the best way to go where the team stands.
That's a very interesting point, Deep. And if we have to actually compare the evolution of Pollard, the batsman in T20, and Russell, the batsman in T20, I see where Ajit's coming from. You can actually trust Pollard with, say, 10 overs to go. Does Russell, firstly, does he have the game to do that? Can he do that if you ask him of that? And what are you missing out on? If Andre Russell's natural game is to take on bowlers, put them under pressure, and what looks like a 180 could become a 220 if Russell tees off earlier, would you ask him to do that, or would you ask him to play differently, like Ajit said, the way Pollard does when there's a lot of time?
Listen, I won't ask him to play differently because Morgan is there this year round, right? You have somebody who has that ability to, even if, for example, he comes and bats, let's say, with 10 overs to spare, and he gets out. So you always have someone like a Morgan there to kind of balance things out and kind of smoothen the edges. So I think KKR should be a little more flexible this year with Morgan around as compared to, let's say, last year, where they were like, a little scared, as Ajit mentioned, what happens if he gets out early? Then what happens then? Then suddenly that 180, which you were thinking of converting to 220, might end up being 160. But I think with Morgan around, you can be a little more flexible now.
The other thing that I think, Ajit, you raised an interesting point of how Russell plays. Teams tend to hold back their best bowler for Russell, right? You want to keep Archer's over or 2 overs, or Bumrah for Russell, like the last game. Last game was a chase. Can you expect Russell to play a little more tactfully, a little more responsibly? Don't take on the best bowler. We've seen Pollard play out bowlers that he's not comfortable with and target others. Whereas with Russell, we've seen him take on pretty much everyone, and he's pulled it off. But would you have a word with someone like Andre Russell to try and get more out of him?
That's exactly my point. He got out to Bumrah, great ball, leg cutter, didn't pick it. And okay, they needed heaps of runs at that point, and they were way behind the asking rate. But do you think he would have done it differently if the situation was different? I'm not so sure. That's the only point I was trying to make. I mean, he's got the ability to do it against the best bowlers as well. But the word is right. Batting tactfully at times, because of the ability that he has, he can score 20 a run comfortably for 5 overs in the end. So does he do that tactfully? We'll have to wait and see if they do send him up the order, what his approach is likely to be. But in recent times, even in the CPL, watched a few games, it seemed that there was only one way that he wanted to play. That can work when you're in great form, but if you're not, that can then put your team under a little bit of pressure.
Right. What about the rest of the batting? Often we look at Andre Russell and we think what's behind him, and maybe that dictates how he plays. Dinesh Karthik's taken this call to come up ahead. I know Sanjay is not a good big fan of that. DB thinks Karthik is best reserved for the last few overs, whether batting first or batting second. We've got Pat Cummins as well now, who's a very
Yeah.
decent batter. We've seen that. So in that sense, can you make the batting order in such a way that Russell is more at ease? He doesn't have the pressure, or if at all, of not having too many people behind him.
Yeah, I think what I also think is you need to split Morgan and DK, right? They can't be like 4 and 5. So how
Right.
I see it is Nitish at 3, and then comes Morgan at 4. Then obviously then Dinesh Karthik and Andre Russell, or even for that matter Morgan, would be more floating. But I'd rather have someone like Ian Morgan coming ahead of DK and playing those middle overs, because I think he's wonderful against spin. And then if you need a platform to be created for someone like Andre Russell to come in and start hitting from ball one, I think Morgan is a better option, is how I see it.
All right, let's talk a bit about Rajasthan Royals then. This should be, it's always fun to see how KKR shape up. They throw in all sorts of surprises. And we'll see how things go on the day to day. They'd be a happy bunch of bowlers, I think, Ajit, moving from Sharjah to Dubai. From what we have seen, though, Dubai can also give you a lot of runs. Rahul scored that brilliant innings. We saw AB and Bangalore score 200 plus against a good bowling attack like Mumbai. What's the trick to bowling at Dubai now from what we've seen in the few games in this year's tournament?
Look, I think from what we hear from the toss, it's a fresh pitch. So it might afford you. We saw early in the tournament they had left a little bit of grass on it, and it wasn't that easy to bat, at least early on in the innings. Then they've started to remove the grass, and it looks a lot flatter. The good part is there'll be bigger boundaries. So some of the miss hits which went for 4 or 6 in Sharjah, you might have a chance as a bowler to at least stop the runs, if not get a wicket. So that's a big plus. How do you bowl on that pitch? I don't think you do anything different. I mean, it'll obviously have a little bit more in it, but it's still a good batting pitch as we've seen. Seems to have a little bit of bounce. We saw Bumrah and the likes, go a little bit short at times, try and use the square boundaries, which were big, try and get the batsman to hit there. So that gives you a chance. So you don't try and do different. I think once you get into the game, you try and assess the conditions quickly. And couple of good things over the last couple of days. We've seen Natarajan bowling some great Yorkers, and Bumrah and Saini bowling some great Yorkers in the super over. So at least bowlers, perhaps that rust is starting to come off, and it's a difficult ball to bowl. The Yorker, always probably the most difficult ball to bowl. And the more confident you get and the more better rhythm wise you feel, the more and more bowlers will start bowling it a lot better than we've seen early in the tournament.
Yeah, what we saw in that last game at Dubai, the spinners did have a significant impact. Rahul Chahal had trouble, Virat Kohli in the middle. Bangalore played both Zampa and Chahal, and if we just take out those drop catches and Pollard and Kishan going mad, they didn't have as bad a day. The figures may not suggest that now. Lots of spin on display today. You've got Kuldeep, you've got Varun, you've got Narayan, and then you've got Tewatia and Shreyas Gopal from the Royals. But Ajit pointed out it could be if it looks like a fresh pitch today, does spin not come in as much in today's game for you?
But listen, someone like KKR, I mean, team like KKR, they have got 3 options, and 3 of them are quality. I mean, if you include the way Varun Chakravarti bowled in the last game, I thought he was very, very good. And also, I mean, if you look at, most of them are wrist spinners or mystery, whatever you want to call them. So I think those kind of bowlers would find some kind of help from the surface, irrespective how good it is for batting. So I think they will be in and also the boundary. I mean, the ground dimensions and will come into the play as well. Pretty long boundaries in Dubai. So I think that will also kind of encourage the captains to go with the bowlers go with the spinners a bit more.
I think, Ronak, I think Rajasthan bowlers might not know what to do with these big boundaries after the last couple of games.
But Jofra Archer's taken the new ball, and that's a good thing too. You've got Unatkat and Rajput, and we've seen some teams prefer keeping their real strike bowler for either the last over of the power play, which I believe is now the tougher over from what I'm hearing, Ajit, and then bring them in the middle to face off against a Russell or the middle order. But you like this, don't you? The best bowler should take the new ball first up.
Yeah, I mean, the great example was Cummins against Warner and Bairstow that game. I mean, those 3 overs that he bowled set the game up for KKR. He got wicket of Bairstow. That's a great example. That's why even Mumbai don't start with Bumrah. So it's a great thing that Jofra Archer is starting. Then you need wickets up front to put pressure on teams. And that's the only way to stop guys. Because if you don't get early wickets, we've seen how much damage batters can do with the kind of firepower they have.
I'm just trying to see from the corner of my eye when I have the feed here whether Sunil Narayan is taking strike to Jofra Archer or whether it's Shubman Gill who's taking strike. But maybe our last parting word on Shubman Gill. Looks a serious player, but 140 is all that he needed to chase last time. But he's better than that. Deep, expecting a big season from Shubman Gill?
You know, me and Ajit were covering that game, and one of the things both of us agreed to is the way he played Rashid Khan. Listen, everyone struggles against Rashid, but the most difficult thing to do against a spinner is to get singles off every delivery, play it straight down to long on and long off. And not for even a single delivery, I thought he was in trouble against Rashid Khan. He just picked everything that Rashid bowled to him. And obviously, I mean, the other bowlers as well, he was obviously quite comfortable. But I think that was the highlight of the last innings that he played. I think he's a quality batsman. I'm looking forward to see how he handles Jofra now.
All right, should be a cracking contest. Keep an eye out on how Kolkata's batsmen come in what order, and that should make for a brilliant halftime chat with Ajit Agarkar and Deepdas Gupta. Will the two of you join us from the same room at the mid-inning show, or are you happy in your respective rooms? Are you on the same floor?
Not really, but we'll check the logistics, camera angles and all that stuff.
Yeah, like I'm sure. Ian Bishop has had the entire party in his room, which I've realized neither of you are invited, so you might as well chill with each other. I'll catch you all at the mid-innings break. Thank you, Deepdas Gupta and Ajit Agarkar. Let's pick up this conversation after KKR have batted their 20 overs. Should be a thrilling discussion on Whirlpool presents ESPN Cricket for T20 Time Out, powered by Dell.